Hey, this is Dwayne again. I'm back here for lesson 2, week 3 and 4. We're going to break this in half. And so we'll do one lesson this week, or half of the lesson this week, and the second half of the lesson next week, okay? So this is lesson 2. January 21st through the 28th will be the next week, and then this lesson is on Powerless, okay? So everybody last time, the last couple of lessons, admitted that you had something going on in your life that needed addressing. Something externally or something internally in your heart, okay, that you've been denying or whatever all these years you've been struggling with. And it's time to get over that. But you can't get over it quite yet because it's a process. And so many times we just get discouraged because we think that, hey, this is going to happen overnight. Well, that's not always the case. You know, they say the path to success isn't straight up like this, okay? It isn't straight up. Just kind of sometimes it's going up a little bit and then coming back down and making a little circle and doing all this stuff and then getting back up there. But the point is to get started, and denial is going to be the first step that you have to get started with to get over denying things, and also justifying your actions and blaming someone else. You know, in other words, I stole this from this guy because he didn't deserve it, you know, or whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of reasons why people justify things. But the fact is, they're just trying to get over, or we all try to get over, the responsibility of our own personal reactions. But this week, the lesson is powerless. 2 weeks ago and last week, it was denial. So, you know, basically powerlessness is basically admitting that we're not God. We're not perfect. We don't know everything. There's nothing wrong with admitting that you don't know everything. I read in a book, I think it was John Maxwell years ago. Very smart man. He said if you want to get into something and start doing something, whether it's a career or whatever, he said figure out who the brightest are in the industry and see if they'll set up a lunch meeting with you and take a notepad with you and see if they'll meet with you and sit down and ask them questions. Write down some important questions before you go, because successful people, they love to have other people be successful as well. And they want you to do well with your life. And they're going to tell you their experiences and what they have found out. And, you know, if you're just getting started, there's no way you're going to figure it out. I mean, you can. I mean, sometimes you can figure things out on your own, but it's just easy if you got some advice from someone else when you're first getting started into a subject that you really don't know anything about. And that's how we get to know God, right? We don't get to know God by taking the Bible and sitting it on a shelf and letting it collect dust. Okay, that's not how we get to know God. That's not how we get to know a family member that we need to get to know, or a spouse or a friend or whatever. You don't just call them once every 10 years, you know. You have to talk to them every day or every couple of days. Anyway, and that's the same way with a relationship with God. But anyway, I wanted to bring up something here that we should be reading every week in our journey, okay? And let me back up. Last week and the week before, you know, I talked about the preparation guides. There's 4 of them for Celebrate Recovery that you can order online, you know, and get them for cheap. But especially a little worksheet and a small book. And there's 4 of them, one for every quarter, one for every 3 months. We'll go 3 months into it, and then you'll switch books, and then you go another 3 months until you're halfway through the program. It's important to start the program in the beginning. You can try to start in the middle and then try to catch up on previous lessons, but if you've got to get to that denial stage and get over that before you can really move forward with some of the other steps in the program, okay? That's going to be the most important thing. But there's this guy named Reinhold Niebuhr, and he wrote this prayer for serenity, okay? I don't know if you can do a screenshot on that or what. But anyway, this thing, I'm going to read it now, but it really helps as far as, you know, letting us know that there's some things we can change and there's some things that we cannot change, okay? So it's basically sort of a prayer, and you can say it and you can close your eyes as you do it. I'm going to read it to you now. You can print this out off your computer, off the internet. It says, God, please grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardships as a pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did the sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. There's a lot of wisdom that goes into that prayer. Now, look, this program, a couple other things that you can print out over the next, couple of weeks or whatever. So, print that prayer serenity out. Go ahead and print out, and you can just Google or use DuckDuckGo if you prefer. Celebrate Recovery, space, 12 steps. Find those, print them out, okay, and then Google or DuckDuckGo, Celebrate Recovery, 8 principles. Print those out. And we'll divide those 8 principles and those 12 steps out throughout the next 12 months, basically, until the end of the year, which would be December. So we're starting now in December. So we have the principle 1 and we have the step 1. We're still on these 2, even though this is the second lesson. I'm going to read those. Realize that I'm not God. Admit that I'm powerless to control my tendency to do what is wrong or do the wrong thing, and that my life is unmanageable. And Matthew 5:3 corresponds with it. Happy are those who know they're spiritually poor. So if you know it, if you admit it, that you're spiritually poor and there's some things in your life that you probably are struggling with, that does not make you miserable. It just makes you acknowledging that you have some things in your life. I mean, it's reality. I mean, that's just the reality of it. We don't go in life pretending that we're saints, or that we're perfect. At least people that have a sense of reality about it don't go around pretending that they're perfect and that they're saints. People that might be delusional might go around pretending that they're perfect, okay? But we don't do that. We know, we most of us know we're sinners, and we admit it, and are imperfect, I guess I should say. So anyway, step 1 says we admitted we were powerless over our addictions and compulsive behaviors, that our lives had become unmanageable. There's something in your life that you're struggling with, and to an extent it's unmanageable, and it may even be unmanageable. And so Romans 7:18 says, "For I know that good itself does not dwell in me." Now you got to know where this is coming from now, and who's saying this. That is in my sinful nature. No good lies in my sinful nature. That's going to be our flesh, okay? For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. How many times have we sinned, and how many times have we repented and we said, God, I keep doing this same thing over and over and over again. It's my weakness, and you quit it for a month or 2 months or 6 months or a year, and then you go back to it. And we're going to talk some more about that later on in the program. So anyway, who is Celebrate Recovery for? Celebrate Recovery is a 12-step program, but it's not just for people, who struggle with this or that sin. It's for people that also have hurts they haven't recognized, that they need to get over, so they'll be happier and they'll have freedom in their life, okay? More freedom, it'll give them a little bit more power. God will help them get rid of some of these things that's holding them back, okay? You can't heal it without admitting it. That's what we talked about the last couple of weeks. We learned about the verse that says you can't heal a wound without first admitting that wound was there. We learned about that last time. So we've admitted the wounds are there. That's where we're at this week. If we're not there this week, we need to go back to the lesson last week and the week before, and we need to sit down with a little notebook and just open up our heart. We need to admit some things, okay? So anyway, but this lesson is powerless, which we've admitted that we have some things and that we struggled with over the years, and now we're admitting basically that we're powerless at this point, personally, without a little outside boost or a little outside help to get beyond some things. We've tried and we keep tripping, okay? So we need a little outside help. So anyway, I would suggest, you read that prayer of serenity every week, every time before the lesson, and you really think about that. You really think about what those words, every word says, every sentence. Read every sentence and understand what each one says. And then we're going to talk about Powerless. Now I've got a couple of stories here about Powerless that I'm going to just, personal stories. I'm going to give you a little bit of personality about me, especially the way I used to be. I used to love horses. I still do. I just don't have any at the moment. I may get some, I may not. I don't know. But not only did I have horses, I broke horses. I would have a horse, a colt be born, and then I would be with that colt, and I would be nice to it, and I would, raise it. I would walk it around. I would flip that horse down while I could. I was a young man, still young actually, but I was younger back then. Things didn't hurt quite as bad. But I would put him down on the ground and I would lay on his neck. See, because if you lay on his neck, he can't get up, even though he might weigh more than you do. But you lay on his neck and he's down there, and he's got a brain about that big around, right? So he's thinking, this guy is something. I've got to respect him a little bit because he's something. He's on top of me, and you got to do that while you're young, because it's hard. It's much harder to do when they weigh 1,200 pounds or 1,500 pounds. Do it while they're young, but be good to them. I was never one of those that liked spurs or anything like that. I would just be nice, unless they weren't nice to me. If they were mean to me, and I had one that used to kick me, and I'd have to straighten her out about that. She was the smartest one I had, and I could probably train her to do anything. She's the only one I could train to back up and do some things while I was leading her. But anyway, she was dangerous. That horse was dangerous. But all my other ones were just sweet, and many times. The first one I got on, when I broke her, I actually had her tied to something the first time I got on her. She bucked a little bit, and I was scared to death. It was the first one. She'd never had anybody on a saddle, never even had a saddle on. The second one, it was just easier. I spent more time with that one and was figuring things out a little bit about how to do it. I got on her, and there was no problem whatsoever. Stud horse named Rapidash. He was a beautiful done paint, 4 white stockings, gorgeous horse. The very same day I put the saddle and bridle on him, the same day I was on top of that horse and riding him through the woods. And dadgum, if I didn't walk up on a big old water moccasin there where the swamp had dried up, and he was headed right for that snake, and I just pictured myself, that snake biting him and him taking off through all the trees and the limbs and knocking me off. But thank God I was able to, the very first day I got on him, to get him around that thing and not have an accident. Finally, at some point in my life, I had to get rid of all of them. I mean, my neighbors' stud horses were tearing my fence down all the time, and I was having to fix it and wasn't getting any help out of anybody, having to take off work and stuff. So my last horse was 2 years old. I'd never been on her before. And I took her to the stockyard over in Uniontown, Alabama, was going to sell her. When I got there, some people said, well, is she broke? Have you broke her? Have you been on her yet? I said, no, I haven't been on her yet. They said, well, you'll get a couple of more $100 if she's, at least green broke. And I said, well, I don't even have a saddle. So this just explained my personality a little bit, okay? This horse was calm, gentle, just sweet as she could be. She was 2 years old. Nobody had ever been on her. She's never had a bridle in her mouth. She never had a saddle on her at all. And if you ever been to a stockyard, you're in a stall back there, and they've got these little alleyways in between. You have animals everywhere, horses, cows, everything you can think of. And people everywhere, people making noises, things you just wouldn't want to really be around getting on a horse the first time, right? All I had was a lead rope and a little harness for her. No bridle to put in her mouth, no saddle. I took that lead rope, tied it to one side over here, or hooked it to one side. It has a hook on the end of it. And then took the other end and just tied it to the loop on this side of her. Got on top of her bareback with that lead rope being my reins, okay? And walked that horse right down through all those aisles, around all that commotion and everything. Didn't have any problem whatsoever. When it was my turn to go out, I rode her bareback all the way outside. that's just who I was, okay? I mean, I really wasn't scared of anything. I mean, and you're supposed to be scared of things, okay? Uh, but I really wasn't as scared as I should be. Let me put it like that. There were some things that scared me, like the first time I got on her. But once the first horse, but when I got my confidence up, man, I could do anything, and I was not scared of anything. But I'm gonna tell you about Rapidash and this whole Powerless situation. You know, he was before I had gotten on him. He was a little bit of a challenge. You know, he was a stud horse and a little bit of a challenge, and I saw it. And so I come home one day, and he had plowed through one of the electric fences, and he was laying on the ground. And I pulled up. I said, "Golly, man! I thought he was dead or something." I went around there, and he was just as calm and relaxed, and he'd probably been laying there for 2 or 3 hours, but he had that electric fence all wrapped around his legs, and it had him powerless. It had him laying on the ground there. Just like when they was young, you know, I put him on the ground and I laid on top of his neck there to hold him down to kind of show who was in charge, okay? Well, that wire, he probably couldn't even see it, you know, and but it was holding him down. And let me tell you, that was a changed horse after that. He recognized that there were some things that he wasn't, you know, the big shot that he thought he was, okay? I mean, he was powerless, and it's really a blessing to realize that we are powerless in a lot of ways. I mean, but there is someone out there that has power, okay? And he can help us because he knows everything. So let's get back to this. So um, here's something, you know, as far as, you know, our ego and so forth. It's better for us to voluntarily humble ourselves than to involuntarily have God humble us, okay, or something else in our life humble us. It's better for us to be naturally humble than it is for something to humble us in our lives, because some of the things we do, and you know, when we get this attitude, and that's why pride. I'm gonna talk about this in a minute. You know, God doesn't really like pride too much at all. You know. And he will humble you. If you got too much pride, he'll humble you, okay? But here's a couple of things that we have to stop doing. One, we have to stop denying the pain. You know, we don't want to face the pain. We know that pain exists, so we run from the pain instead of addressing the stuff in our heart, okay? Because, you know, a lot of us have been taught, especially men, you know, ignore the pain. It'll go away. Well, it's not going to go away. You have to address the pain that's going on in your life. It's not going away. That's a lie. It's there. If you have pain, it's there. A lot of people turn to drugs, alcohol, chasing women. You know, if you're a woman chasing a man or whatever. For me, workaholism was one of the things, and you know. So anyway. But you got to eliminate some of these things. The only way to eliminate some of these things that's holding us back is to first address them and stop denying the pain, okay? We've already talked about denial, but I want to talk about it again. And don't think you're weak if you admit the stuff. Look, King David, I know I keep coming back to him, but this guy was a talented musician, right? I mean, and everybody heard about him. He was such a musical genius. And then this little guy, you know, he slayed this big monster called Goliath. He's not a monster, but he was just a giant, a really tall guy that was an excellent killer in the field. And he slayed him. And it got back to King Saul. And King Saul bumped that guy up in the ranks, okay? And King David, he was charismatic. Everybody loved him. And he just kept moving and moving and moving and getting up in more and more respect. And he pretty much had it all. And the next thing, what happened is King Saul said, that guy's more popular than I am. And he got jealous. So David was really literally had feared for his life. And he should have, because Saul was kind of out to get him there for a little while. But anyway, this is King David talking in Psalm 6:2-3. It says, pity me, O Lord, for I am weak. Now here's a king now saying this. Pity me, O Lord, for I am weak. Heal me, for my body is sick, and I am upset and disturbed. My mind is filled with apprehension and gloom. Well, don't you think that a guy was trying to come after you or whatever, or especially someone with a lot of power, you might have to be a little apprehensive about that. So anyway, but he was very blunt, and he addressed the issues, and he didn't run from the issues. There were issues there. He faced them, and then he addressed them. So anyway, he was actually asking God, because he knew this was outside of his expertise range, some of the things he was into. And so he quit playing God, which is what I'm talking about here. We can't play God, okay? Sometimes things we're in over our head, and we need a little outside help. Matthew 6:24 says, "You cannot be a slave to two masters. You will hate one and love the other. You'll be loyal to one and you'll despise the other." So you can't really love the world and the crookedness out there in the world, and you can't love God at the same time. That's basically what that's saying. And it doesn't matter, what it is, if it's politics or just life in general. You get to know somebody, you get to know somebody who they are and everything on a deeper level than just the superficial stuff that you think you see about them dressing up nice and clean shaven and soft spoken, and they come off as being perfect, but you get to know them and you realize maybe they're not so perfect. Don't give up on them, because nobody's perfect, okay? So don't give up on them. But anyway, and the other thing is, by nature, people are selfish. We're selfish people, okay? And the more selfish we are, the more unhappy we're going to be, because, the more we want, the more unhappy, the more we're not going to get, the more we see that we're missing out on. And, so, that's going to hurt us. So, anyway, our flesh, when the Bible talks about our flesh, it's basically talking about our human / animal type behaviors and tendencies, whether it's or whatever. There's so many, there's even people out there. I've met a few atheists over the years that believe that's simply what we are animals, and animals that choose what they get to do, and without any kind of repercussions. So anyway, when we try to control situations, especially situations that we can't control, that are out of our control, we feel like we failed and just, whatever, and that causes problems in our life. But we've got to just be able to admit that we haven't necessarily failed. It's just life. That's just the way it is. Have you ever been in a relationship and had someone try to control you? Usually someone who tries to control others, or someone, a lot of times, has had a terrible childhood and they didn't have any control whatsoever in their childhood, so they become an adult, so they try to put the hammer down and just control, and because they think that's what's bringing them peace, when it doesn't bring them peace, and it brings a lot of hardships and problems into relationships and so forth. But I'm going to go back to this, someone, and usually they're always judging others and treating someone else much harder than they treat their own selves. But I'm going to go back to that little talk that Jesus said about the two guys that were praying. Do you remember that? There was two guys praying, and Jesus said one of them was just, ripping his clothes and crying and upset, and God, please forgive me. I'm a terrible sinner. Please help me with all these things that I'm dealing with. And then there's this other guy over here that looks over and he says, God, I'm so thankful I'm not like that guy, And Jesus said it was the first guy that is right with God, not the guy that's over there looking over there and judging him or whatever, that's looking outside. It's the guy that's looking in his heart and is personally communicating with God about him, not communicating about what everybody else is doing out there. That's the only way you can progress. That's the way not the only way, I'm going to say it again. That's probably about the only way you can progress, is to admit what's in your heart. You can't change what anybody else is doing, but you can change what you're doing. If you change what you're doing, it might influence other people to be better people themselves. whether it's in your family or outside your family or whatever. It doesn't matter. But anyway, when we play God and we try to control situations, we're really losing out. So let's not take God's job away from Him. Okay, let's give Him a little bit of credit for creating the universe, which scientists say they haven't figured out yet. So He knows things we don't know, and He knows the entire situation. He knows everybody's feelings. He knows their heart. He knows everything they've been through in the past, including you. So let Him help fix some things. Start letting go of that stuff. Admit we're powerless in some situation, and give the things over to God that we are powerless over. Change the things we can. Let go of everything else. Give it to God. Now, two things we need to stop doing. Stop doing is stop admitting, about our powers. Lust for power is rooted in weakness, not strength. Not usually, unless you have a personality that is real protective over a group of people or his family. Sometimes they'll try to rise up to power to try to protect the flock, so to speak. But normally it's rooted in weakness, and it's a false type of strength that you have to be careful with that. Okay. A lot of people can't be around someone who's different or an idea that's different, and we can't have a conversation with someone with a different opinion. If you can't have a conversation with someone with a different opinion without resorting to name calling or things. It's one thing if you're an attacker, they're attacking you and you're sensitive to that. But if it's just a different opinion, even if it's something controversial or whatever, if you can't, deal with that, then and have a legitimate conversation without coming up with, cussing each other out or something, then maybe you're a little weak and you need to work on some of those things, because people should be able to have different opinions about things and not just fall out with each other if they have a different opinion. So the second thing here is we've got to start admitting that our lives have become unmanageable, and there's some things that we've created. We can't blame on somebody else that have created unmanageable conditions in our life. Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can really appreciate things in life. You appreciate things and you're thankful for things, but you're not thankful for them enough. You go to some of these third world countries and see people walking around barefooted and sleeping on dirt floors in their house, and taking showers outside in the public with dirty water, and you kind of recognize, well, hey, maybe we got it pretty good, but when you hit rock bottom, you see, you only have one place to go, and that's up, right? And when you go up, and you know where you were, and you know where you're at now, you appreciate things more. Psalm 40:12, again, this is King David, when Saul's wanted him dead. He says, "Problems too big for me to solve are piled higher than my head. Meanwhile, my sins, too many to count, have all caught up with me, and I'm ashamed to look up." He's ashamed to even look up. This guy, talk about spiritually poor, right? This guy, he's walking around, man, I've really messed up. And I've messed up a lot. Not just one time, but a lot. He said, sins too many to count. Now, this is where he's at. So, anyway, Celebrate Recovery, they like to do this, what they call an acrostic, and I like them okay. They sometimes can be a little bit too long or boring, so I'm going to try to skim through this. Powerless, pride, only ifs, worry, escape, resentment, loneliness, emptiness, selfishness, and separation. Pride is an important place to start on our powerless journey. It makes us do a lot of things we do. And as we know, God does not favor pride, but instead humility. Proverbs 29:23 says, Pride ends in a fall, while humility brings honor. Proverbs 8:13 says, "To fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior, and perverse speech." Isaiah 2:11 says, "Human pride will be brought down, and human arrogance will be humbled. Only the Lord will be exalted on the day of judgment." And in 2 Chronicles 32:36 says, Then Ezekiel humbled himself and repented of his pride, as did the people of Jerusalem. So the people's anger did not fall on them during Hezekiah's lifetime. God doesn't like pride. It's not good for us, and it's not good for others. If we have a lot of pride, I mean, it causes a lot of blocks in our life. Now I'm going to stop this lesson. This is halfway through it, and then I'm going to start back. And next week we'll come back again, and I'll upload that and let you see that. So anyway, but I've enjoyed it, and I hope someone's getting something out of this out there.